midway through turn 2 in Breitenfeld. The Imperials are both sides are restricted from moving for the first few turns of the game, supposedly. The Imperials are restricted until they take a disruption hit from artillery. They took that. The Swedes outnumber them with artillery, so they launched an attack as soon as they could, essentially. And I've made a charge into the Saxon line here. Wasn't all that effective. However, the artillery did manage to eliminate the Saxon cav. That's not enough to break the Saxons. They have to lose infantry for their army to rout. I also pulled back the Imperial line from facing the Swedish cav up on the front there. I view that as the weakest spot in the Imperial line, so I try to refuse that flank. This is risky. There's no question. We'll see. We'll see what happens, but the Imperials have to do something. And here's the Swedish response, extending their cav across as a line to the Saxons to try to give them a little bit of support. And they made a quick attack, which actually killed off one of the good Imperial cav that was disrupted. Pulled back their disrupted units and launched an overall forward movement towards the Imperial left, which I think is the weaker part with all those cav. The attack on the Saxons was successful. They're now demoralized, and the Imperials pulled back a little further in the face of those Swedes. Again, the plan is to try to attack only where I have the advantage and to pull back wherever I don't. However, defending the artillery is worthwhile for various reasons. The Swedes sweep their cavalry in to try to protect the Saxons from taking further losses and presumably to hammer some of those Imperial cav. They got one, but the cost overall looks very high. They've got a lot of disrupted units. There's a couple of Imperial infantry waiting to pounce on them. Over on their right flank, they're proceeding cautiously. That defensive line is really too strong for the cav to handle right now, so they're slowly pulling the infantry up to see if they can crack it. It's a big weak spot right here with Imperial units, infantry slowly marching towards it. This could definitely go against the Swedes this time. After the Imperial turn, the Swedes are definitely paying the price for trying to defend those Saxons. They took several losses on the cav that got disrupted back there. Now the Imperials have a couple losses too, but that line is pretty hard. However, we'll see if the Swedes attack it directly, and the Imperials are definitely sending some forces forward to try to exploit that weakness. All right. Swedes have countered, pulling some of the units off that flank back to help defend their center, and they pulled the weak spot inward along the river line, hoping to present a more painful entrance. Does that give up these units over here? Probably not, because they're cav and they can run around. But what is dangerous, wiped out an Imperial cav unit that was disordered. But I also went after that infantry unit. You might say, well, things looked bad enough, you shouldn't be doing that. But you demoralize the enemy army, and in the case of through infantry losses alone, in the case of the Imperials, right now the losses are 50, and so that's a fifth of their demoralization value. However, those values start going up as the turns progress, and I'm not quite sure what they are, but I think turn 9 is the first up, and that goes up by like 10. Eventually it gets up to 75, which is what the Swedish value is. Anyway, demoralizing the enemy is a huge advantage, obviously, but the rules support it quite well. So we shall see whether or not the Swedes being audacious. What they did was they did a cav charge, which automatically disorders all the units involved in it, but it doubles their strength for the combat. They can only do that against disordered infantry, it gives them a good chance of wiping out Imperial infantry, though, which is much, much bigger. Even disordered, it's as big as a big cav unit, and there wasn't a lot of strong cav around. Imperials are mopping up the Swedes down where the Saxons had been. They have to face some artillery. They may end up losing a unit that way, but we'll see. They're also moving around to try to jockey for position against the main Swedish line. And that probably means the Swedes are going to want to recall their flanking attempt, because clearly launching it at this point would be foolish, I think. Quick overview. Skip forward a little bit, just to give things a little bit of time to develop, not a lot. One of the biggies is some artillery injuries. One of the sort of the key point right here at the corner, that big unit got knocked out by artillery fire. Also, one of the Imperial attacking units over here bit it. So that's putting the Imperials at about 19. If they lose about that many again before turn 9, their army becomes demoralized. That doesn't look too likely. Right now the Imperials are trying to jockey for position and get a good attack, and it doesn't look like the Swedes are going to give them that. But the Swedish army isn't big enough really to hold the whole line at this point. They've got a gap over here, and they've got some gaps over here. So they may have to open something up. On the other hand, the Imperials haven't moved forward with their central position, central and left, which they were thinking about charging forward with, but didn't really trust the Swedes not to be able to attack them close in like that. So yeah, at some point or another I've got to make that attack, I guess. But right now the Imperials are definitely winning. They'd like to win a bigger battle.